Okay, so this is going to be a spoiler review of the end of Act 1, Episode 3 of Arcane. So if you haven't seen this series yet, you're missing out. Highly recommend it. You stop the video if you care about spoilers. It'll be here when you get back. Do yourself a favor, go watch Arcane Episode 1 and just binge it. I know the last 3 episodes are coming out this week, but so far we've covered the first 3 episodes, and I just finished the third, and it has been an experience so far following this series and seeing where it's going. The payoff has just been phenomenal. It's just been a roller coaster from start to finish. So we're gonna jump right into it. So another disclaimer, spoilers, but if you don't care, welcome. Let's talk about it. So we open up with a point of view from Silco of all people. Like, I'm glad he got set up, because I was wondering at which point was he actually going to get set up as, the big bad of the series. But don't get me wrong, Silco's most definitely a villain. But it's apparent now that everyone in this series is coming from different shades of gray, and they have their own agendas for their own reasons. And it's just kind of respectable, because we open up with Silco being drowned in the drink, and we get this long monologue about him, about how he's just floating, how it would be so easy for him just to let go, but the only thing that made him hang on was just hate, right? For the person who was doing this to him, as the river toxins is just leaking into his scarred face, and that's how he got his messed up eye. And eventually that rage was, as he got older, was just replaced with clarity by what he needed to do. And so he was thanking the person who was doing this to him, during his monologue. And it turned out, as the camera panned up, as the Green River got bloodied, it was Vander that did it to him. So yeah, that's how it opened up. And we pretty much pick up where we left off, with Vi, who was turning herself into the Piltover Enforcers. I turned out to be right at the end. The people who got there first, it was actually it was Vander and what's his name? Benzo. I actually been making a mistake since episode 1. I've been calling Benzo Bulbok, but Bulbok was actually the little golden robot that was on the council. Well, at least I think he's a robot. I don't think he is, but that golden species of guy who looks mechanical in nature. So that's who showed up, and it turns out that Vander made the decision that Vi wasn't going to turn herself in, because he's going to do it for her. He's going to take the fall for Vi because he loves his kids that much, and he's willing to do that for them. Vander's a changed man. So the Enforcers get there with Officer Grayson and that dick Marcus, and Grayson is reluctant to take Vander in, because he's the one that's been keeping the lanes in check this entire time. With him gone, everything falls apart, and she knows it. So there's this respect between the two, especially since they've been working together for so long to keep the peace. But she caves, and they cuff Vander, and as they're taking him away, things don't go quite according to plan. In the last episode, Silco was gonna make his move, and we see Silco finally show up in person, because he's been manipulating the enforcers, or rather the corrupt enforcer Marcus, behind the scenes, which led to a chain of events in episode 2, and which led to this moment here, because he's been inadvertently helping Silco cause civil unrest in Zon. So anyway, what's his name, that kid? Completely Deckard, right? He's been drinking that stuff, which we come to find out, that purple stuff, which we've come to find out is called Shimmer, and it's turned him into a monster. At first, I thought he was going to be like Dr. Mundo or something, but no, I don't think Mundo's going to appear here. It doesn't seem like. That'd be cool, though. But no, he's just a monster now, and he just slaughters all the enforcers. They don't even get a chance to fight. Shockingly, the plot armor is not strong with with even named characters, because Grayson gets slaughtered as well. I did not see that coming. And the worst of the worst, Marcus gets off scot-free. He gets his gets his sack of gold. He's like, what are you doing? This wasn't part of the plan. But Silco's his own man. Plans change. And so they take Vander right in front of Vi. And I like the scenery of it. Like, Vi's locked in this room where Vander put her, so she can't help. Even if she was out there, she would get killed too. And as these officers are getting slaughtered, you just see the windowsill get splattered in blood. So the scene goes from green, like the hazy green of Zahn's streets, to just blood red as blood's being spilled on the streets, and the horror is just occurring right in front of her. Absolutely terrifying, as Deckard just kills them all. Well, enhanced Deckard. So anyway. And the sad part is, alright, they take Vander, and the person who ends up letting Vi out is little man himself. Echo saw everything, and there was nothing he can do. So Echo is an interesting character. Like, I know this is Vi and Jinx's story, and we have like other characters sprinkled in, but I'm curious to see where Echo's character is gonna go, because he's experienced trauma too, because he saw his his boss and friend Benzo get killed. Just people he's known just died in front of him, and he couldn't do anything about it. But Echo did follow them to the location, and that's how Vi ends up finding out where their hideout is. Right? So they regroup. Vi goes back to the hideout, to the last drop, the bar, to look for those Vander's fighting gauntlets, right? She tells them what happens, and naturally everyone jumps in and they want to help. Now, this scene here, Powder wants to help too. Naturally, that's her dad too, and she wants to come along, but Vi is insistent that she stays. And it's for a number of reasons. One, it doesn't make sense for Powder to come. Two, I think in the back of Vi's head, she understands that, she saw what happened. Powder didn't see what happened. And if they were to bring Powder, they're already in over their head. And Powder has shown that she's nothing but a liability in these types of situations. And this is one like situation that they just cannot afford her to jinx. But that's how I view it, from the perspective of Vi. In her head, even though she was like, no, I can't, like, even though it's true that she's like, no, I can't have you come. You're the only family I have left. In case I don't make it back, you need to live. I can't lose you too. That's what she said to Jinx. But I think in the back of her head, she's like, no, I can't bring Powder, because she's too young. She's gonna fuck this up, right? So that's just how I interpreted it, because this show rewards you heavily for paying attention, and based off of what we know. And, Vi's a kid too. She's not perfect. She makes mistakes, right? And I truly believe, like, leaving her, like, the way she did was a mistake, even though it was right in her eyes. Like, yeah. So they take off and they leave Powder alone. And for the first time, we get to see Powder, like, by herself, and how she handles being alone. When they depict this kid just throwing a tantrum and breaking down, you understand that, you get glimpses of inside of her mind, right? And she's just throwing a tantrum, ripping the heads off her dolls, like throwing shit across the room, crying, screaming, hitting herself, and just losing her shit. And you're like, oh, she's not, she's, it's understandable she's unstable, but it's like, oh wait, there are hints of what's to come in her, like right now. She's not, she, you know, she's a kid, but you get there's some instability there, which is setting up to what she eventually becomes. And I love that, right? And the scene just feels so raw as she's throwing shit like across the room, like she's about to throw her bags with the bombs, not the bombs, the hex crystals, the unrefined ones, and she's like, stay, but they're fine though. Later, but anyway, anyway, as they drop out of her bag, when she tosses it across the room, she's like, she gets a flashback. She's like, oh, these caused the explosion back in episode 1. And she gets the idea in her head, I can help them. Because that's all she wanted to do. She wanted to help her family. She didn't want them to die like their parents did. And Vi and Vander are the only, you know, and everyone else, they're the only family that she has. So being a kid, of course she's gonna take the bag and she's just gonna go. She's gonna go help. So, cutting off. We're gonna cut off right there because it's gonna be important later. We're gonna cut off. We're gonna go to the next section with the other characters. Jason, Victor. I love the dynamic of these two. Ever since I read their lore when it was revamped way back when, Victor is a character that stood out to me to be just, well, just interesting, like as a character, and seeing like his origin story, essentially starting him here, and how he pretty much is the other side of the coin to Jace. Like he is Jace's like equal in every aspect. He is just as smart as Jace, because not only does he understand Jace's research, he's the one that actually refines and does the calculations to make Jace's hextech technology work so they can actually harness magic. And he picks it up. Mind you, this is how smart Victor is. It hasn't even been an entire day. Victor just glanced at the book and immediately, you know, of Jace's notes, and immediately understood what was going on and how to refine his process in order to harness this magical energy. I cannot understate, I can't overstate how important Victor is to the story. If Victor wasn't here, there would be no Jace. They're just interconnected, just like Batman and Joker, right? And Victor says it here. He's like, you know, we have to crank it, right? So you can't lower the frequency, you have to increase it. That way you're gonna be able to stabilize the so and so, blah 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 blah, whatever, you know, nerd talk. And that came from Victor, not Jace, right? So they you get to see how they kind of like build off each other, and they're better for it when they work together. And it makes it so sad, because you know where their individual characters are going to end up eventually, and it's like, damn, this is great while it's lasting, but it's not going to last forever. Eventually they're going to diverge, but I won't get too far into that. Victor mentions that they're going to destroy Jace's life's work, like the following morning or whatever. And, you know, Jason's like, they can't do that. That's my entire life's work. Like, we have to do something. So Victor's like, we can get your materials back. I got the keys. Because in episode 2, Heimerdinger told Victor to lock up, therefore implying that Victor had the keys, and it was actually showing us payoff that Victor does indeed have the keys. So they can just waltz right on in. And that's exactly what they do. So they pick up and they go. And when they get there, trying to sneak in, they get caught by Counselor Madonna, Mel, right? And I love Victor and how Victor has his his own dry sense of humor. So he's like, oh, this isn't my room, so and so, and you know, they made excuses. Jace shoots a shot, right? Madonna's there because she expected them. She's a very intelligent character, right? And she sees the value in Jace's work, and she gives them motivation to get it done tonight, or else they're out of here, right? Their life is over. So, she distracts the guard and lets them do their thing in the lab, right? Or they proceed to get to work on refining the Hextech process before it's even called Hextech. I'm calling it Hextech now, of course, because hindsight and all that. But so actually, I'm just gonna go ahead and finish up their work while they're getting. Because this is a pretty short section. There's not a lot to it. It's pretty straightforward. And the meat of it is what Vi and Jinx's story. So they eventually refine the process. Guards come, Heimerdinger comes, and he sees that, oh my god, they're floating in the air. They've harnessed the magic, and neither of them are mages. Humans harnessing magic. It's insane. This is the discovery of a lifetime, and they've done it. What was thought to be impossible, improbable, highly improbable, right? So just because it could be done doesn't mean it should be done, but it is what it is. It's over. And there are implications now that Hextech finally exists in the world that's going to affect the story at large now. It's insane. It's actually really insane thinking about it like this. The things that are going to happen now, like the city of progress. One thing that did bother me, though, when Jace was trying to pitch to Madonna why he should let them go. Piltover's the city of, progress, something else, and equality. When he added equality in there, I just kind of rolled my eyes, and I'm just like, have you seen Zahn at all? But then again, he did say Piltover, so. But that equality thing really did bother me with the things that are going on right under their nose. Yeah. And my question is, why hasn't Heimerdinger done anything? He's been there long enough, and it seems like he's just overall just ignored Zahn this entire time. Even he's in a bubble, I feel. And, he has a closed-minded nature about things. So I mentioned before, Heimerdinger, in the game, he's this, quirky scientist type, he loves science. But here, he doesn't seem like he has the title of professor or scientist or whatever. He calls himself a scientist, but his curiosity and love for it that you see in the game just really isn't there in the story. He spent most of his time telling them what they can't do and not pushing boundaries in a safe way. Because if he wanted to, Heimerdinger could have done this on his own, but he just chose not to. Understandably, due to fear and all that. And Heimer's right in his own way, but Jace and Victor are right too. And eventually this was going to happen. It may not have even been in Piltover. It just so happens that it is in Piltover, where the opportunity to do this was possible. So anyway, that's the end of their story for now. At least until Act 2. I'm guessing there's going to be a time skip, because that just makes the most sense. But anyway, jumping back. That's the end of Jace and Victor. The creation of Hextech and a new era is beginning. Because that's a huge deal in the timeline now. Just the implications of what the tech can do, it's actually insane. But anyway, away from that. Back to the meat of the story. So, we cut back to Silco and Vander. And they're having a conversation. Silco takes Vander to his base at an abandoned factory. And they're having a conversation about the past, and you get a little bit more insight into why Silco is doing this. And, it's not for an egotistical reason. That uprising that we saw in episode 1, I assume that might have been the same day he adopted, Vi and Jinx or something like that. But basically, it was a civil uprising against it was a civil uprising, I guess, And Vander ended up turning on Silco and betraying him and trying to kill him, which Vander deeply regretted. It's kind of hazy. Like, they don't just exposit everything. They kind of like leave it up to your interpretation of what happened, but you just kind of get the gist of it. Silco was greatly hurt by it, and eventually he says, you know, um, that rage that he felt was eventually replaced by understanding and clarity of what he needed to do in his purpose, because Silco wants true, what Jay said before, Silco wants true equality, like, for the people of Zon, because basically in episode 2, when Vi was going off on Vander about how ever since she was young, the people up top made sure that Vi knew her place and made sure that she knew that she could never aspire to be more. And you kind of see this reflected in Vander as well, in his point of view about things. Because I always said, Vander's villainous, but that doesn't mean he's all bad. He has a vision and he's just doing what he thinks is right. And in order to do that, especially where they live in Zon, he's moving in a morally gray area, even if the shade is darker than most, you know? Can you really blame a man for that? So yeah. Um so yeah. But just because he doesn't hate Vander anymore doesn't mean he's not gonna make him pay. So he's gonna torture him and beat him up really bad. So he opens the gate and you see the chair song just sitting there menacingly as familiar music starts to play. It's Warwick's music, and all of it. Vander's room. Is he Warwick in this episode? No, but you see glimpses of the beast. I'll get to that. So, flash forward. Vi, Clagger, and Milo eventually make it to the factory, and they're gonna break Vander out. They get in way too easy. It's obviously a trap. And it's a trap. They've been set up. So, in order to buy time, Vi puts on, Vander's, and she goes to work. Every hit, the animation is just so smooth. I forget that I'm watching like essentially a cartoon at times, because you're just so invested in the story. You're like, oh yeah, these are real people. You're invested in their problems. You want to see them succeed. So Vi's throwing down. It's crazy. Like, it's not completely one-sided either. Sure, she's doing good. Vander taught her how to fight, or Warwick's quote, "Who taught you how to punch?" Apparently this guy did, and he did a damn good job of it. Because Vi's just putting in the work. Like, and they have to send, all right, we can't just send one, send two. And send two with the knife. Here, take this. And she's still knocking people. Like, when she lands a punch, you feel it. Hey, props to the animators who did this. And it wasn't a clean fight either. Like, they're ganging up on her. Like, she's taking hits, but she's giving just as much as she gets, even more. Like, it's crazy. And it gets to the point where Silco has to send back in that kid, Edgar, or whatever his name is. What's his name? I was saying it this entire time. Benzo's dead. Deckard, yeah. Silco has to send back in Deckard and give him more shimmer. We finally get the name drop for what the stuff is. So, Deckard gets roided up and Vi's in over her head. She gets knocked out because, she's doing a flying takedown, and he just grabs her out of the air, snatches her up like a sack of potatoes, not even looking, and tosses her to the side. Doesn't need these potatoes, and Vi has to flee back into the gate and lock it so they can buy some time so they can get out. Milo's getting to work, still trying to pick Vander's locks to get him out of the chair, and Clagger is found a hollow spot to where he can break through the Clagger found a spot where he could break through the brick. Meanwhile, Jinx, I'm sorry, not yet. Powder is watching all of this from her perspective. Oh, my sister's winning. Like, you know, she just wants to help. My sister's winning. Okay, oh no. Vi's in over her head now. My family's gonna die. What do I do? Like, I have to help them. I have to help them. I just want to help them. So she does what she knows how to do. She gets out her monkey, the little clappy thing, and gets that unstable hex crystal, and, you know, makes a little, essentially like a bomb. Because she understands that, you know, if the crystal collides with anything, it sends out a resonance pulse that can double as a bomb if it like builds up enough momentum and energy. So that's what happens. Now, this part is super controversial because you feel bad for Powder, because it's like, oh my god, my family's gonna die. I have to help them. What would you do in her situation if you don't have complete information of it? Because, you know, you're viewing it from the outside perspective, but on the inside, on the other end of that wall, they're almost out. Deckard is breaking through the steel door, but it's holding just enough, right? And Milo just got the last latch off of Vander, and Clagger just broke through the other end of the wall, so they're home free. All they have to do is get out, and they are gone. Powder doesn't know that, though. So she sends in the monkey, and the monkey does its job. She even loads it up from the head with 2 more extra bombs, not just the one that she sent clanking. No, that thing is loaded. So the monkey goes to work, and an explosion happens that you see from multiple angles as you see these people, you know, Vander and his family about to escape. You see the door just blow up from the other side as Vander looks at Vi. Boom. You see it from Silco's perspective. As Deckard gets blown up by the monkey. Boom. You see it. And even, you know, it's just this huge blast that just spreads everywhere. It's ginormous. The biggest we've seen. Bigger than the one in episode 1. So Silco's about to get hit by the blast too, but one of his underlings, one of his minions, pushes him out of the way. She I think she's still alive because they have her body at the end, but she loses an arm. So yeah, Silco survives by the skin of his teeth. Oh, and I'm confident, I've been saying this entire time, that scientist down there is Singed. So I think we got to see the actual birth of Singed now, because I was like, Singed doesn't look very singed. He's covered in bandages because, you know, experiments and burns, chemical burns and all that. Well, I think he's gonna look more like Singed now because he got hit by the blast. And Singed's a tank. I'm pretty sure he tanked it okay. And plus, he has a bunch of shimmer next to him too, so he could just take that and be cool. So that happens. Everything just gets destroyed, goes up in flames. And going back to Swain's quote to Jinx, you know, faces fading in the flames. It was all her fault. That's insane that Riot actually planned that, like, years in advance. Like, ever since Swain's rework, that quote is just hits so much more now. And a Warwick quote, which I'll say later. But anyway, yeah. So as things, and I forgot the most important perspective as well. We saw it from Vi's perspective, Vi, Milo, and Clagger. We saw it from Silco and Singe's perspective. And speaking of Milo and Clagger, they died terribly. Like, I didn't think they would go there, and I was so worried since episode 1 that they were just gonna get introduced just to die, because I've never heard of these characters before. I've never seen them, but knowing what I know from, like, you know, the lore and stuff like that, and character voice lines and hints of the past and stuff, I was just like, oh my god, this is how they go. And it was terrible. And in hindsight, stuff I've said since episode 1, I was like, for instance, like the spike thing, like when they were going down the little, like the little drain hole, the little drainage pipe into the like sewers where the trash is. That kind of just came full circle, didn't it? With what happened to Milo. And poor Clagger, man. He was like my favorite out of the bunch too. The tank couldn't tank anymore. So yeah, and to add insult to injury, then they get buried by the rubble. This show doesn't hold back, like with the violence. There's not a lot of violence in it, but when the violence like hits, it serves its purpose, and it's done masterfully. Actions have consequences. And now the most important perspective. Not yet. Powder's perspective. She's seeing this, and it's the most beautiful thing in the world, because I mentioned in episode 1 how a theme was set up about how her inventions never work, you know? Well, it finally worked. She was finally useful, and she was finally able to help, right? And from her perspective, as she's falling off the building, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. The feeling of like catharsis, like she's floating. Like there's absolute horror and terror happening on the inside, but she's totally disconnected from that, which is more foreshadowing to what she's eventually gonna become. And I love it. Like it's actually insane. It's like fireworks to her. This is how she sees it. It's beautiful because she doesn't have the context to understand what's going on the other end of things, because she wasn't there to understand and comprehend the situation properly. It was just beautifully done. So she's removed. Okay, so Powder's removed, and the factory is going up in smoke now, and Vander is pissed. He's lost everything. His kids are dead. He thinks Vi is dead. He gets up and does the one thing he knows how to do. Finally, like, he's back, right? The beast is unleashed, and he tries to give it his all to the enhanced Deckard, and he gets in a couple good shots, but corrupting pot is overpowered. So yeah, he gets tossed like a sack of potatoes because he gets ganked by Silco, who lived through all that, gets stabbed in the back and then stabbed in the front and then tossed aside. But he lands on a crate that had a lot of shimmer in it, so he ends up taking some, and he's back in the fight. He gets his corrupting pot. He's going AP, and we get hints of the beast to come. Like, Vander's been called a lot of things, like the Hound of the Underworld. When did you become a lap dog? He's a Warwick, and it's confirmed because when he took the stuff and he became enhanced himself, he sounds just like him, like his snarl, his growl, the way he speaks. It's how Warwick speaks in the game, right? So he snaps the enhanced Deckard's neck and just tosses him like a sack of potatoes. And as he's about to go for Silco, he sees that Vi is still alive, and he gets a hold of himself and his senses back, so he's not just a wild animal. And he sees that the factory is about to explode, so he makes the choice. He lets Silco go so he can save the only family that he has left. And don't get me wrong, Vi woke up at that point and she saw her friends dead in the rubble. She has no idea what happened, right? And next to them, she sees the head of a monkey, right? And she won't find out what that meant until later. She has no idea Powder's there. Actions have consequences. The fact that I'll get to that. But anyway, and the enhanced Vander makes a move and saves Vi. And they jump out of a window. Vander used the last of his strength to do that, and he ends up dying right there on the spot. Like as soon as he takes the impact of the fall for Vi. And his last words were, "Take care of Powder." And as he lay there dying and she's like grieving over his dead body, the flames, right next to the flames. Oh, speaking of, another Warwick quote. That I think it's to Vi. Yeah, it's to Vi. A girl crying, something, a girl crying. And now that we have proper context, now that this Arcane's been released, it's like they planned all of this from the very start, and it's very impressive. That might be like inconsequential. Like you don't have to know like the lore, every voice line of the characters, but for the people who like play the game or are into that type of stuff, it's like, dang, it's so much harder now. It just adds so much depth to the characters that were just open to interpretation from before. It's like, dang, I know. So anyway, Powder comes out and she's having the time of her life. She's happy. She's like, Vi, did you see that? My monkey bombs finally worked. I helped. Yeah, we did it. You're out. And then Vi turns around. Bitch, that was you? You did that? Why would you do this? And then, Jinx is so happy. I'm sorry, not yet. Powder's so happy. She doesn't understand. Like, she underestimated just how strong that blast was and what it did. They were home free and she jinxed it, right? So by showing up where she should have just stayed put, but she's a kid, how was she supposed to know, right? This is the first time we see Vi truly like lose her temper with Powder, and it just hits so freaking hard. Like the realization sets in what starts to realize what she really just did as she sees Clagger's goggles laying to the side, Vander's dead body behind Vi, and she just starts to understand like, oh, no, I didn't mean to. I only wanted to help. I only wanted to. And she just starts breaking down right there. Like, the voice actor who did this is absolutely insane, because you're like, oh no, you just feel so bad for this girl who wanted nothing more than to save her family, her only family that she had, because she already lost her first family. Who's afraid to be left alone. You just start to feel for her and just start seeing her break down as any kid would, as they start to realize the situation and what they did. It's insane. Like, shit, man. I'm starting to but yeah, Vi loses her shit for the first time towards Powder, and all that bottled up, like all those bottled up emotions. Mind you, this entire time, Vi has been putting on a strong face for everybody because she's the oldest, right? She's the leader, right? So she's, ever since their parents died, she's been like the kind of like, I guess, the parental figure to a young Powder, right? And the mature one of the group. She's the one that had to keep her shit together so she can keep everyone else together. But now we see that mask just slip, and all that stress and all those emotions just start bubbling up to the surface, and they get taken out on Powder with her words, like, not only her words, but her actions. And she's like, I told you to stay away. And as Powder's just sitting, just there, screaming, trying to explain, just, she's scared, right? They're both, they're both hurting in a way, right? She told her to stay away. I didn't bring you, like, everything she's been feeling up until that point. I'm sure she didn't mean to say it, but it is what it is. Like, it was the literal heat of the moment. And she just confirmed all of Powder's worst fear. I didn't bring you because you jinx everything. You're a jinx. Everything you touch turns to shit. Like, you should have just stayed away. This, that, and that. And then you just feel so bad for Powder when, oh, it was just a huge overload, especially when Vi turned her hand to Powder and just smacked the shit out of her, honestly. And just, bam. And she goes to the ground, and then you see her, like, what the hell did I just do? Like, the fists, the hands that she wanted to use to protect Powder, everything she's been doing has been for Powder, right? And she's confused as well. Heat of the moment, right? The hands that she wanted to use to protect her sister, she ended up turning against her and hurting her, right? Because Powder hurt her and their family, even if it was unintentional. It was just an unfortunate situation. And it wasn't all of Powder's fault. As I said before, actions have consequences. And I love Arcane how they show even the smallest stuff is relevant later on, because you get to see the chain of events from little decisions that characters make to how those can have huge repercussions later on. Like Vi's decision to let Powder keep those crystals, right? And how they would end up being used against them later when Powder's device finally works. All because, and from a small thing, how I said before, bad things happen when Powder is separated from the group, right? But in the same vein, because in episode 1, because Powder wasn't there to hear Vi say, when they first found the first crystal in Jace's machine, she said, "Now just leave that." Powder wasn't there to understand what she was talking about, and she didn't know she was referring to the crystal. And it just so happens that she finds a bunch of crystals in her chest and takes a bunch, right? That's what happens when she separates from the group. But in the same vein, that same machine that they said to leave, that was the last hex crystal that Jason Victor would use to perfect hex tech. Which is funny to think about. It's like, wow. You see the two sides of those coins, right? So I like how that just came together, like, perfectly from little decisions that are made, right? And it just makes everyone feel much more real and autonomous, right? So Vi looks at her hands, she looks at what she did, she smacked her sister, and she looks at her fists. It's like, I interpreted it as it's their blood on her hands too. Maybe because she's the one that let Powder keep the crystals in the first place. I'd say she's just as responsible for that as well. So, because honestly, I understand her wanting Powder to stay away, but honestly, who would take care of Powder at that point? Like, she already knew Benzo was dead. Like, and if they didn't make it back, she'd be alone anyway. So it's just like, it came from a place of emotion, and she didn't think it through. Because how could she? Because Vi's only human. She's a kid. She is a kid. She seems mature, but that is just a facade. That is a front, because she had to grow up quickly. Because it was either to do that, she had to do it to survive, basically, and take care of her sister. So yeah, he's a kid too. So it's just a terrible situation. So Vi looks at her hands and she just starts walking away. And as she's leaving, Jinx starts to break down again. She's like, "No, Violet, come back, please. Violet, no, don't leave me, please, Violet, no, I need you." And she's just sobbing and crying. Props to the animators because I'm just sitting there pulling on my hair like, "Oh no, this is terrible. Don't leave her, please." And you understand both of their perspectives, but you're like right there with Jinx because the voice actor absolutely nailed it. I felt personally like I was getting destroyed too, watching this little girl cry out for her only family she has left because now she's truly alone. Her worst fear of not being wanted anymore, like being called useless, her insecurities being brought to light by the one person who she thought always had her back. That's devastating. Being called like what you were afraid to be called, a jinx, right? It's only shaping the character of what she's eventually going to become. So Vi, she doesn't go very far. She just goes like right around the corner. She needs to get her bearings and collect herself because she's been through a lot too. She just lost everything too, and she needs a minute. And you can tell she's sorry for what she did to Powder. That's why she walked away in the first place. So, Powder's there crying over Vander's dead body too. Well, not over his dead body, like kind of like a couple feet away from it, where Silco shows up, still alive. And, you think he's about to kill her. He has blood. But what matters is how she gets there. "Hello, little girl." He talks to her. "What are you doing here? Did your sister abandon you too?" And then, he kneels down to her level. You get it. You don't. Sure, he brought it out for protection, the knife, and I get the feeling like if he didn't see Vander's body, I'm pretty sure he may have killed Powder there, right? But no, he empathizes with her because as soon as he kneels down, Powder is going through like a mental breakdown. Her mental barriers are down. She's alone in the world. She doesn't know what to do, and she takes comfort and solace in the first person that comes like near her, and that just so happens to be Silco. She just tackles him into a hug. She needs that reassurance. She needs that comfort because she has lost everything, like in the flames, right? So, and she hears, and she says words that resonate with Silco. Yeah, after he says, "Did your sister abandon you?" And then Powder's like, "She's not my sister anymore." And then as he looks over, he hugs her and he looks over and sees Vander's dead body just laying there. And he says, "I had a brother once. And we'll show them. We'll show all of them." And then you see more of Silco's goons just kind of show up. I guess they survived. They were knocked out by Vibe. I guess they just kind of, they have tank stats. they're still alive. So they just start to surround them, and you get to see what eventually is going to become Powder's new family, as she's kind of just taken in by their enemy, right? So, one more thing. Vi sees this. Before all that, Vi sees this, and as she sees her sister's in trouble, she still cares, and she's like, "Oh no, Powder!" And she's about to go and try and save her from Silco, because she sees the knife and all that. That motherfucker Marcus shows up last minute out of nowhere. He saw the explosion. That's how it got there. Chain of events and all that. Jinx's explosion brought Marcus, so he chloroforms Vi and takes her away. and presumably to cover his own ass and pin everything that happened that night, like all the dead enforcers. I'm assuming he's gonna pin all of that on Vi. So yeah, because I think this is setting up Vi and Caitlyn, because in the lore we know how. Well, I don't know if they're gonna take liberties with this, but Vi and Caitlyn like meet and they meet. So I think they're just gonna take liberties with that. But it's, what I'm saying is, it's setting up a Vi and Caitlyn relationship later on, and I wonder how they're gonna flesh that out. And they're gonna do that because Vi is going to jail, so that might be how they do it. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Vi's out of the picture. She can't say Powder, and they are separated now. And as the closing shot happens, as Silco's saying, "Don't worry, I had a brother once. We'll show them. We'll show all of them." As Powder is surrounded by her new family, being cradled in this man's arm, she opens her eye. She opens her eyes, and you see that, her sky blue eyes are now pink as she's looking into the flames, and that's foreshadowing to who she would eventually become as she becomes Jinx. This is where Jinx is born. This is the scene where Jinx is born. Essentially, like, it's foreshadowing to who she's eventually going to become. Those eyes we know all too well. And then the closing shot, the closing music, it was just the icing on the cake. It's called, I think the song was called Goodbye. And that was just the perfect, that was the perfect outro music. Like, all the emotions that you experienced up until that point, mixed in with the soundtrack and all that, music to my ears. Goodbye. To their family, to their friends, and I think it's gonna be a time skip, because that would just make the most sense. How old was Jace? He said he was like 24 or something like that, so we might be maybe a 5 or 6 year time skip, maybe 7, don't know. But yeah, we'll definitely find out during Act 2. So goodbye until then. I hope, if you stayed until the very end of this video, good on you, mate. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought of this episode 3. Leave your favorite moments down in the comments. If you noticed anything I missed that you want to talk about, feel free to. This show has been phenomenal, absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to get to Act 2. So I'll be getting that out when I get it out, probably like soonish, because I definitely want to get it out before Act 3 drops. So yeah, yeah, comment down below what your favorite moments, and I'll see you during the next one, episode 4. So till then, goodbye.